let's pause for a moment. Let's come into the present. And let's remind ourselves that we've never been here before. We don't have all the answers. We are right on the edge of the unknown. And so let's enter a space of humility, of curiosity, and of wondering. Let's listen deeply to ourselves and to each other. And let's bring our true selves into this conversation. The essence of who we are. Speaking, listening, on the edge of the unknown.
Welcome, everyone. What a great honor and privilege it is to have the opportunity to create and host a panel of this phenomenal group of remarkable people that said yes. I chose the opening transformance that Sarah McCrum and I created because this really is, my intention is to have a conversation in radical presence on the edge of the unknown, to really discuss issues around the ascension of the feminine and the divine masculine in a new way. And I think that these four people have some beautiful contribution to make. And what I hope at the end of this is that we've explored vulnerable territory and around a lot of issues that have gotten muddled, I think, around the confusion of the hyper-genderification of this conversation, of the balance of the divine masculine and feminine. And I just want to acknowledge, before we introduce my panel, I just really want to bring Ben in for a second, because the objective of all of this was that we're really creating a bridge to just like the Holo Movement book had really explored, and many of you who might know about the Holo Movement book, they really explored all these multiple sectors and disciplines, and applying the Holo Movement to many sectors of this experience of life on Earth. And in the same way, Ben, this New Earth idea is helping us understand our objective. And the title of today's talk is The Sacred Marriage. And I want to acknowledge and thank Matthew Fox for that title, because he was talking with me about this a few weeks ago. And I said, could I use that term? It's the perfect description of what I hope we will discuss today. And then the rest, the subtitle was the unification of the divine masculine and feminine for a new earth, right? So in the understanding, metaphorically and literally, of what a new earth means, and this would really help orient all of the speakers on the panel to really understand what our objective is to bridge to an understanding of the new earth. And so how do we apply this conversation to that? So hey, Ben, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to go off out of my musical wheelhouse into something that I hold very near and dear to my heart, this subject. Ben.
Oh, bless you, Gary, Malkin, and thank you for all of your gifts. This incredible plenary discussion that you pulled together. So excited about it. It's like a wedding ceremony. We're gathering together here as a community for this sacred wedding ceremony. And thank you, Gary, for everything you've blessed us with this week and leading up to this with your extraordinary musical transformances and pieces that have been played constantly throughout the week. New heaven and a new earth is an idea which goes back almost 3,000 years to the prophet Isaiah, where he says, "Behold, I create new heavens and a new earth." And this phrase has been used throughout history. And so to be here on the verge of this moment with this new earth rising, the title of this plenary, the sacred marriage, unifying the divine feminine and masculine to co-create the new earth. It just struck me, Gary, that we are not the first. This is not the first time that the idea of a new earth has been linked to the marriage. I want to speak about that in a minute. But let me also say how wonderful it is to have your incredible panel coming together, in particular to have Matthew Fox back here in World Unity Week. It's a very auspicious and a blessed moment to have Matthew and the other panelists coming in. So St. John the Revelator in the book of Revelations used the phrase of Isaiah and said, "I see new heavens and a new earth." And he characterized heaven as coming down like a bridegroom, like a bride adorned for its groom. The marriage of heaven and earth is seen as the essential coming together in the dynamic of this new earth, of this new heaven. So the marriage of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, the yin and the yang, heaven and earth, the unification of these two great aspects is the seed that births the new earth rising. So it couldn't be more perfect, Gary, than the plenary that you and Matthew and the others have selected for today as we celebrate this sacred wedding, as we celebrate this sacred marriage in joy and in love. So thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this together. And let's enjoy it.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm going to just share a little bit. But before I do, I just want to really appreciate, I'm going to read each person's bio before they each speak for their piece. And then we're going to have a conversation, all of us together. And then hopefully we'll have time for some Q&A as well. I'm probably going to play a transformance again some point in here, because I found that when we don't lubricate the context of these talks with some beauty and visual and audio beauty, things get a little dry. And I just love to I'd love to lubricate when necessary. So first of all, I just want to I'm going to start with introducing my beloved friend, Christian de la Huerta, because it was through Christian that I was able to secure an introduction to Matthew, who I've been loving and admiring for so many years. And I've been at some of his these masses, these cosmic masses. I went to one with you, Christian, so long ago. So Christian, just bring Christian up. Christian de la Huerta, thank you for being here on this talk. And I can't wait to tell you, each of you, I've been wanting to introduce Christian de la Huerta to the World Unity community for years. And I'm just so thrilled, Christian, that you're here. And just anything you want to say, just as an opening, just because you're going to have more chances to speak as each person will.
Well, I just want to say thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for the invite. Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing from all the presenters. It's an honor to be here again.
Yeah, Christian you'll hear more about Christian, but he's the author of Coming Out Spiritually, which was a number of years ago. And then my book that has really been by my side since it came out. I read it, I carry it with me on all my trips. Wait for you to reference it about. It's a beautiful book for every visionary who wants to make a difference in the world. So, Christian, I love you, and I so respect your work, and I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you.
Harry, sorry, brother, just to jump in. We didn't catch the name of the book. Would you repeat it again for us?
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Christian, tell us.
The most recent book is called Awakening the Soul of Power.
Awakening. Sorry, I called it Soulful Power because that's your website. But Awakening the Soul of Power. And it's a beautiful accomplishment. And we're going to hear more about that, because I knew that Christian, you were the first person I thought of when I wanted this panel together, and that's why I called you for the introduction, Matthew. I want to bring up, thank you. I want to bring up, there it is, yeah. I want to bring up Yasmeen Turayhi. All of us, have you noticed when you're in a room and there's these younger women that are coming into our world, and there's just such a phenomenal sense of I'm where I need to be, with whom I need to be, hearing what I need to hear, because I'm in connection with the bridges to the incoming generations. And really, Yasmeen is one of the leaders, and you'll hear more about her Gateways to Awakening podcast. But she doesn't consider herself an expert of this subject. And like Matthew said when I talked to him, these multi-generational conversations are lifeblood, because how we do this is how we approach life, and how we say yes to one another is so important. So Yasmeen, I just want to say thank you for saying yes. I love who you are and what you stand for. I don't know how you fit into each day what you do. You're pretty remarkable in terms of all the things you're up to, and you'll hear more about that. But Yasmeen, anything you want to say, just as a taste, so people can feel, maybe a website or the Gateways to Awakening, or just anything. I just want to make yourself present here.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, thank you so much for this invitation. It's such an honor to be here. And I just feel like it's such an absolute privilege to have this conversation at this particular moment in time. For those who are podcast listeners, my podcast is called Gateways to Awakening, and it's really a bridge to bring the sort of Eastern mind and the Western mind together. And it's really starting with non-local consciousness versus local consciousness as the thesis, and exploring it with academics and neuroscientists and mystics. And so it's been a lot of fun, and just so grateful to have this opportunity to connect with all of you. Thank you, Gary.
I can't wait for all the people on this panel to be on your show as well. So, yeah, thank you, Yasmeen. Can't wait to hear what you have to say more about this stuff. And then, Shenali, I want to bring you up now, because Shenali's a new friend, and the first moment that she met me, a day after the death of my mother, and I just said, I'm a little bit preoccupied. Can we talk in a month? And she said, Gary, I just heard from 3 people that I'm supposed to talk to you, and I didn't know who this person was. And the moment we met, I just went, wow, I am so grateful to meet this beautiful soul. So, Shenali, welcome. I just had an intuition that you had to be part of this, especially because of what you're doing for the power of women. And just say a little bit about that. We'll have more to talk about later, but just anything you want to say in response to being a part of this panel today in this important conversation.
I want to start by saying thank you, Gary, for introducing me to this community. I think it was last month, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here with some incredible individuals in the panel. And I personally, just like Yasmeen said, I think it's very timely, this conversation, especially because we are leading the Power of Women movement. It's a cultural movement of how do we really recognize the feminine and the masculine energies that's within every single one of us, and work together in solidarity towards a common mission for humanity. And the way we are doing it is through the power of women, elevating women to step into their greatness, so we can open up the space for everybody else to step into their greatness. So that's just to give you a few words about power of women, but thank you, Gary.
And now you understand why I invited Shenali here, because her motive is the power of women as a strategy for awakening the energies of the masculine and feminine in all beings, and particularly through the power of edutainment. I call it entertainment, but whatever it is, it's the power of music and media to awaken, inspire, and align us to our best selves. So we are kindred siblings, my dear, and I'm so excited to hear more about what you're up to and what we can co-create together today and beyond. Love you. So great. We'll be calling you to speak in a little bit. And last but not least, Matthew Fox, I'm so touched and grateful that you're here, Matthew. This is, You know, it's weird. I have a lot of people that admire me in the world that I've never met, but I'm sure you've got a million more than me, because I know I haven't had a relationship with you that you haven't even known me until a few weeks ago. And I just want to say thank you for your commitment and the depth of the adventurous truth-telling that you've been doing for so many years. And as a lover of art and music and media, as a transmissive tool for awakening our vibrational field that understands the role of immersive performance as sacrament, right? And as catalyst for awakening. I'm just so grateful for everything you've done, and especially right now for saying yes to this panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gary. I'm happy to be with you, and these other panel members are looking forward to our exchange and conversation. And I'm glad that you come at it from the perspective and the energy of an artist, because that's what spirituality is all about. I tell my students there's only two responses to a mystical experience. One is silence, and the other is art. And so I'm so glad we have an artist on board, and I'm sure that all of us have, in our own way, been stirring our imaginations and our capacity for poetry and color and all the rest. This painting behind me is by M.C. Richards, a wonderful artist in her own right. She's famous as a potter, but at 70 years old, she took up painting. She said, it's too late for technique. Color, it's all about color, she said. But she calls this painting, she actually writes in the center of it, birthing a new cosmos. So that seems appropriate for the theme you have here about a new heaven and a new earth. And I think these are a wonderful telling of the theme that we have today of bringing together the masculine and the feminine, Father Sky and Mother Earth, and all the rest. So yeah. Glad to be here.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, I really want to leave as much time as possible for the panelists to speak, but I actually did a bunch of really plagiarizing. I just took a lot of things that, Matthew, that you've said, and so I'm going to blatantly grab some sentences from you, but because I just want to share a few things. First of all, this wonderful quote by Joseph Campbell: "The old gods are dead or dying, and people everywhere are searching, asking, what is the new mythology to be? The mythology of this unified earth as of one harmonious being." And that just sums up the purpose of my intention for this conversation. And I'm just going to share a few thoughts, and because I want to say, these things some of these are from you, Matthew. The age of fragmented humanity, as expressed in our reductionist ways of understanding and embodying. Well, you said the age of fragmented humanity is now dead and dying at our feet. Those are your words, Matthew. I added, as expressed in our reductionist ways of understanding and embodying the masculine and the feminine. So there's this here, I think, another thing I want to say is, here's more of you, Matthew. For the masculine, it's a bloody tangle of weaponry and bloated egos glued together by myopic one-upmanship and congealed rage. And then I added, for the feminine, and I didn't have time to edit this, so you're going to have to catch my drift. It's a distorted obsession with postured definitions of feminine sexuality, oversimplified with two-dimensional descriptions of emotional fluency, with a self-importance that seems to have a monopoly over all things compassionate, nurturing, and spiritual, and, well, human. So is there a more unified way to embody less literal and overly genderfied archetypes as we seek to rise to a more elevated way to be the balanced, awake, conscious children of the divine that we are all inherently are? And I just said, might it serve us if we were to bring forward some of Howard Tisch's work, in which he wrote this book, Solar Light, Lunar Light, perspectives in human consciousness. And what he says, his premise is that the over-gentrification of the energies of masculine and feminine have seduced us into a misunderstanding of what the yin and the yang of human consciousness is all about by making it all about gender. And suddenly, as a man who's hearing all the time about the ascension of the feminine, there's this little part of me that says, what am I, chopped liver? I'm a man, and I have the yin and yang and the masculine and feminine side of me too, And where is the conversation happening in the public around understanding, like you said, Shenali, that these are the male and female energies that we are all, that is our birthright? And how can we elevate the discussion to the mainstream understanding that this is about an energetic union of something that is inherently a part of all of us? And what can we do together? How can we learn from the LGBT community around this deeper understanding of the integration of the male and female? What can we do and how can we be together to actually understand, for example, the power of the women movement that Shenali was talking about, where she uses the power of women as a way to elevate all of us, right? And that's not apparently clear because everyone's talking about the ascension of the feminine. So I just, that's what I wanted to lay out, was this, the dangers of over-genderfying these conversations, and what can we do in our bringing forward this conversation to elevating it to a new level that will create and produce opportunities for people to experience the sacred marriage within them. And we can hear most of you talk more than me. I'm going to throw that gauntlet out. I'd love Matthew to start the conversation and let you speak for 10 minutes. We're not going to have a timer on, but just I'd love you to speak to us about this and anything else that comes to mind about this sacred marriage, and then we'll pass the baton. And I'd just like to read a little bit about Matthew's bio, just so for those of you who don't know. Matthew Fox is a spiritual theologian who has authored 41 books translated into 79 languages, including Original Blessing, a spirituality named Compassion, and Occupy Spirituality, a radical vision for a new generation, with Adam Bucco. In his book, The Hidden Spirituality of Men, 10 Metaphors to Awaken the Sacred Masculine, he treats the sacred marriage of divine feminine and sacred masculine, offering as one example the green man marrying the black Madonna. Matthew, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Gary. I think the biggest obstacle to the divine feminine entering our consciousness and then our institutions is a damaged masculine. I think a very damaged masculine is running things in the world. I would call it the reptilian brain untethered. And the reptilian brain is about win-lose. Reptiles aren't real good at bonding, but they love to be number one, you see. Get in a fight with a crocodile, it's hard to compromise. And the reptilian brain, of course, is 420 million years old in all of us. So it thinks it's number one. It's been around a long time. And the mammal brain, which is half as old, is that brain that's capable of compassion and nesting and kinship and so forth. And of course, the word compassion in both Hebrew and Arabic comes from the word for womb. So there's a big link between the energy and power of compassion and the feminine, the divine feminine. And of course, great spiritual teachers who may have been male in terms of gender, like Buddha or the Dalai Lama or Jesus or Isaiah, they set compassion out there as number one energy for humanity. The Dalai Lama says we can do away with all religion, but we can't do away with compassion. Compassion is my religion. Well, Jesus said in the 6th chapter of Luke's Gospel, be you compassionate as your Creator in heaven is compassionate. So this call to compassion is a marvelous example of I think, a union, a communion, a marriage, therefore, of feminine energies and maternal energies, and also the masculine energy of protection and of fathering and so forth. And it is interesting that in our inherited religious traditions, we have males, such as I mentioned, preaching compassion. And of course, Muhammad, without any doubt, in the Quran, the most common adjective for Allah is Allah, the compassionate one, the merciful one. So I think we have this invitation from all the spiritual traditions of the world, really, to wake up to compassion and that we're capable of it. And that's a big deal, because in the Jewish tradition, compassion is the secret name for God. And Jesus, being a Jew, let the secret out of the bag. But the fact, this is about humanity coming to a new level of evolution, where we actually start acting our godliness. We start acting that we're capable of compassion. And of course, in the biblical and Jewish tradition, compassion means justice. It's not just a feeling. It's also about the way we do our structures. Are they balanced? Are they balanced regarding a masculine and feminine insight and energies, a yin and yang, as we're saying? Are they balanced about yin and yang, and softness, gentleness, and strength? And that kind of dialectic is a dance. And I see that dance being integral to everything we're talking about today, that a sacred marriage is a kind of dance. It's not that the masculine in me or the feminine in me as a man, or the masculine and the feminine in a woman, that they wipe each other out or cancel each other. That's not what a dance is it? A dance is about integrating differences and taking delight in different energies. So in my book that was alluded to, the 10 archetypes, metaphors of sacred masculine, I go through things like the green man that was mentioned. The green man's really coming alive today because it's so appropriate for a time of climate change and ecological crisis, because the green man is the archetype of the male who's in touch with his generativity, though there are green women too, and so women too. But it's often pictured with a beard that goes around the head like a wreath, and in the wreath, in the beard, there lives grapes or birds and other living things. So it's about men becoming warriors to defend Mother Earth and the world of vegetation, because the plant world is, of course, the oldest world of living things on the earth, and we depend on it for so much. So that's one of the archetypes, the green man. And then there's the Father Sky. You see, with the new cosmology we're receiving from science today, and of course, Hubble telescope is, Hubble, but also Webb telescope are tremendous examples of this, what we're learning about the vastness of the universe, about the 13.8 billion years that brought us all here. It's just astounding when humanity links to a creation story. And of course, all of our ancestors have their creation stories, and they're all wonderful. And now we have this common one from science that the whole globe is becoming aware of. Well, it's a tremendous moment when this kind of awakening to our origin stories happens. And so this is a tremendous sign of hope and possibility for our species, that we can gather around the campfire, if you will, to tell common stories of how, of course, our bodies are made of the same things as the stars and the supernovas. And you run the movie of the universe back 13.8 billion years, and we all began at the same place. So we are all kin. We are all kin. It's one family, this universe. And this, of course, this planet that is about 4.5 billion years old. So we can up the ante on what the Native Americans pray when they say, Homotakiasi, all our relations, that all our relations are sacred because they're bigger than us. We didn't make any of them. We're very late in this journey of the universe, and yet we're here for a purpose. We are a unique species. We're uniquely dangerous, obviously, but we're also uniquely gifted because we do have Webb telescope up there beaming back these amazing pictures of the history of the universe into our computers, into our living rooms. And surely this has a potential to wake us up and see things again in terms of unity and not in terms of competition, in terms of cooperation, and in terms of taming the reptilian brain, not squelching it, but gathering our mammal brains, which are our brains capable of compassion. And just one other archetype I'll mention is the blue man. The blue man, Swami Muktananda, says the greatest meditation of his life was when he saw a pearl morph into something blue, a blue pearl, and then into a blue man that came out of the pearl. And it's so striking to me that he had that meditation in the late 20th century, and he said it was the most important meditation of his life, and he had a lot of meditations. And Hildegard of Bingen in the 12th century in Germany, Benedictine nun, had also a vision of a blue man. And she said, this is the healing Christ in all of us. We all have a healing blue man inside, but I did a picture of it. And so I just think it's amazing that a Swami from the East, from India, Hinduism, and a Christian saint from the 12th century in Europe had parallel vision. And both of them talk about the healing powers of the blue man in all of us. It is our divine powers of healing and compassion, therefore. And she painted a mandala of it, a wonderful painting of the blue man. So what I'm just saying is we have this legacy, this inheritance from all our world traditions about what makes a healthy human being. And that means a healthy male. And for the men especially. And for the women, of course, we have this resurgence of archetypes. For example, Gaia herself. Gaia is a goddess. Earth is feminine. Mother Earth is called Mother Earth by 90% of human cultures. 10% talk about Father Earth, which is great because we don't get literal in this. But there's also the return of wisdom. Okma in Hebrew is feminine. Sophia in Greek is feminine. It's a return of feminine, of wisdom, not just knowledge. We've had knowledge factories for 300 years and we're destroying the earth. We need to redo education in terms of the divine, bringing the feminine in, and that includes wisdom and, of course, creativity. MC Richards, whose painting I referred to earlier, she says, all creativity brings forth wisdom. There's wisdom in all creative works. Hildegard of Bingen said that, but MC Richards played with that too. So what I'm just saying is that we have in our collective riches, legacies, spiritual legacies, all these examples of masculine and feminine among Lakota and indigenous people, praying with a sacred pipe, but also praying in the circle, and also, of course, in the sweat lodge, which is a womb. So when people are healthy, when a culture is healthy, you have an alive masculinity and alive femininity that is imbibed in both male and female people. But you don't have a distorted masculinity, because that is the way to destruction, is what we're doing now. ecocide, matricide, by killing Mother Earth. And of course, the young feel this and are rising up against it. But of course, all of us have those same feelings and that moral outrage that in fact lights a fire so that we get moving on our inner work, but also our shared work, that of recreating our institutions, whether education or politics or religion or media and everything else. So the opportunities today for a global awakening, might call it a renaissance, are right there. And necessity itself is calling us, I think.
So beautiful. You know, this is one of the reasons why I've been so moved by this conversation is I've been an artist my whole life, and I've been accused of being too feminine. Everybody, you know, just being someone that is a stand for what John O'Donohue calls the silent embrace.
Gary, I'm just going to jump in just real quick. If you could just take your mic down a little bit. You went a little bit too high there. It's quite distorted.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
All right.
I want us to, let's see, how is this? We should have done this before. Okay. Is that better?
That's good.
Great. Thank you. Okay, good. So the idea of music and arts as an awakener of our inherent wholeness, and it's been, you know, challenging as a man to be someone that has been a stand for allowing music to be a catalyst for feeling and for using our own inherent wholeness to come forward through the power of beauty and the way it awakens that, you know. So that's just one of the reasons why this has been meant so much to me. Matthew, thank you. That it was beautiful foundation upon which to build this understanding of the sacred marriage. Do you have anything last thing to say before I introduce our next guest to say something, and then we'll all have a little conversation?
Pete, is that it?
Matthew, would you like to say anything else before we pass the baton?
Oh. Well, I first got more to say, but I'm eager to hear and to listen too. Okay. But yeah, so I think you gave me enough time.
All right, great. Okay, good. Yeah. All right, good. Well, hang tight because we're going to hear Shenali. I'm going to ask you to speak next, specifically because of the way in which you described the power of women and its purpose, which was very clear to me from the moment we started talking. And I wanted just to read your bio. I can find it. Here we go. Shenali, where are you? Where are you? Oh, dear. I thought I had you right here. Well, you're going to have to. Here we go. Shenali. Shalani. I keep on calling you Shenali.
Shenali.
Is it? I keep on confusing. All right. Well, Shenali Rajanatram is an extraordinary leader, social entrepreneur, and the visionary founder of Power of Women and co-founder of the We Are the Hope 501c3. With a profound dedication to elevating women and fostering the development of self, society, and the environment, she embodies the kind of female leadership the world needs today. With an impressive background in music, media, entertainment, and technology development, Shenali has continuously pushed boundaries and pioneered innovative initiatives. From the concept of edutainment, she is driven by a commitment to broadening the narrative and bringing balance to humanity. Shenali's approach is solution-driven, centered on collaboration, peace, well-being, and love. Her exceptional work is a testament to her unwavering passion for creating positive change and inspiring collective empowerment. And so welcome, Shenali. So in this conversation, where we care so much about the balancing of these forces and doing whatever we need to do to inspire and catalyze that, what have you to add to this conversation of the things we all can and must do to inspire the sacred marriage within all of us, as well as the mainstream?
Thank you, Gary. What Matthew shared was so inspiring. And I want to base off of that and take a different perspective. We are so used to looking outside, the approach we are taking with Even Power of Women is let's start with self. And I want to start off by making it very clear. It's crucial that we acknowledge that divine feminine and masculine energies refer to the archetypal qualities that are present within all of us, regardless of our gender identity, because I know that was spoken. And these energies are not limited to biological sex of being female or male, or societal gender roles of being a woman or a man. And it's more of the expression of our consciousness. And I sometimes like to even think masculine and feminine energies, these divine energies, are like a toolbox every single one of us have access to, draw different qualities and characteristics from. With that being said, I really believe it starts with self. We have to start reflecting what is happening within us, because when we are born, when we come to this world, regardless of whether you're a male or a female, we cry when we come out of the mother's womb. That's the first thing we do usually. And in society, typically crying is associated with being more feminine. It's actually a good thing to cry. And it's not like, I think Gary said it, it's not just dedicated for women, that the female role gets, the female get assigned the gender role of being a woman. It's not just for women, it's for everybody. So just taking that perspective and really looking at the world in a way where everything has masculine and feminine energy. And perhaps we need to, as we're looking for solutions, we maybe need to look at within ourselves how we are balancing masculine and feminine energy, like within us. Because growing up, I'm Sri Lankan, so I grew up a little less than half of my life in Sri Lanka. And my brother and my dad didn't really treat me like, oh, I was this little girl. They were like, you can do anything. So I didn't have this concept of adhering by these gender roles of being very girly or whatnot. So for me, I feel like when you don't really give in to the gender roles that the society imposes on you, you can really explore who you are as a person. And that's what's really needed. And really, it's a journey that's happening within. And that is what we take to the world. Because when we have harmony within ourselves, when we can accept that we have emotions, we, as a woman, I mean, I still have more masculine aspects of, let's say, leadership qualities or being assertive. I'm still a very feminine woman in societal standards, but I still embrace my masculine qualities, because that's what gives me the full set of tools to really understand who I am. And I think that is something anybody can resonate with, because we all go through so many emotions. We go through the same issues in life in different variations, no matter where you live, no matter what skin color you are, what gender, how you identify your gender, as we all go through the same set of issues in the world. And especially when there's imbalancement, even the environment is reflecting back. That is why we had to take climate action, because there's an imbalancement even reflected within the environment. So in that essence, I know Gary and we have had conversations about feminine and masculine, and that is why we are here today. It's really important that even with the movement, the Power of Women movement, it's not just about women, it's about how do we elevate women so they can step into their greatness. So we can, when we are sitting in our power, when we are solid, when we are in balance, and create the space so men can join us as allies. That is our better half. And for men, we are the better half. We are the better half of each other. So how do we create that space? And again, the word woman shouldn't be a distraction, because it is a gender role, but we have to get started somewhere. There's no better place to start than now. And there's never a perfect way to start, but we have to start somewhere. And Power of Women is one of those starting points of addressing what's happening in the world. How can we give women the space to step into their greatness so we can allow all others to step in? And that includes women are the ones who give birth. And as mothers really have the power to raise their children and influence them to think a certain way. So it's very crucial that we really allow the females of our society to really bring in the feminine energy, the characteristics, the love, nurturing, compassion, and infuse and incorporate them into the raising of children so the sons can actually think, oh, it is normal. It's okay to feel emotions. It's okay to express. And it starts with the parents. So having that, I believe, is very important. And like Gary said earlier as well, Power of Women movement is taking the medium of music, media, and entertainment as the avenue of mass communicating with a global audience. Music is something, it doesn't matter if you don't speak the language or not. Every single person in the world has a connection to music. And if you hear a really beautiful piece of music, it doesn't matter if it's Spanish, Hindi, or English, Chinese, Korean. If it's really good, it has a good beat, we're gonna bob our head or dance. And it's something that speaks to your heart. And these are the ways, methods we have to start thinking of, taking different methods. How do we approach this? So we are using music, media, and entertainment to create edutainment because whether we like it or not, that is also the same set of items that are reinforcing the current societal norms in the world. When we watch a movie, how are women and men perceived? I mean, these are little things we don't realize, but every single day we are exposed to so much media, whether through social media, when we are driving around, to watching TV, going through our phone, we're exposed to so much media. And as the World Bank put out, there are 5.4 billion smart device users in the world. And this is one of the most impactful ways for us to reach a global audience. And in fact, edutainment is set to be the next biggest thing that's happening in the entertainment industry, Gary. So that is something the World Bank has been working for the past couple of years with some of the major organizations. And that is the route we are taking as well. And that's the same thing that goes into what we are doing in September, the Power of Women Digital Conference. It's in parallel to the G20 Summit. And why did we choose the G20 Summit? It's a gathering of the 20 most powerful nations in the world. And only 2 women are there to represent almost half of the population in the world. And clearly there's an imbalancement, whether we want to accept it or not, there's an imbalancement in leadership, perspectives. And what we are doing is we are gathering all the incredible, powerful women from around the world to join the parallel event and share their perspectives, their contributions, take a solution-driven approach and showcase this is what the power of women has to offer to bring balance. And we are not here to blame anybody. We are not here to say you did this wrong. I mean, we know things are not working out. It's a matter of time. What can we do to make things better moving forward? And again, constantly remembering it starts with us, ourselves. It starts with how are we showing up in the world? Because when we are even looking for peace, well-being, we have to show up in a state of peace to even be a part of the collective to take action towards peace. If there's so much chaos happening within you, especially because of the imbalancement of masculine and feminine energies within you, I mean, you're not gonna show up 100%. So it starts with self, and that's what the Power of Women movement is also about. How do we collectively come together, recognize each other, that we are all going through the same process individually, whether we share it or not publicly, we're all going through it. And how do we come together, have a shared mission for humanity that involves peace and well-being? And how do we work together in balance, in harmony? So I hope that is covering most of the
Yes. Thank you. It was beautiful. I kept on thinking about this, what Matthew Fox said about leaving, migrating from being centered on the reptilian brain. And I work with an organization called the Global Institute for Evolving Women based out of Europe. And when I work with these women and use the arts as a way to reclaim their hearts and souls as their center of their being, rather than having to imitate male ways of being in the business world, it feels better. It's generative. It creates more cooperation. It creates more unity. So in a way, this is one of the reasons why I love Howard Tisha's book, Solar Light, Lunar Light, because it takes the energies of the masculine and feminine and takes it away from gender into a larger conversation of that which is reflected in the natural world, in the world of physics, the world of lunar and solar light. So thank you so much for your take on this. And I want to make sure, I know how time passes so quickly because I really want to have enough time to have a little conversation among us all. But so thank you. I'm going to pass it on to the next person for discussion. And so grateful for you to share what you shared, my dear. Thank you. Our next guest is, let me see, do we have time for a transformance? I don't think we do, because I want to move along. Okay, so, Christian de la Huerta. With 30 years of experience, Christian de la Huerta is a sought-after spiritual teacher, personal transformation coach, and a leading voice in the breathwork community. He has traveled the world offering inspiring and transformational retreats that combine psychological and spiritual teachings for lasting and life-changing effects. An award-winning, critically acclaimed author, Dr. de la Huerta has spoken at numerous universities and conferences and on the TEDx stage. His first book, Coming Out Spiritually, was chosen by Publishers Weekly as one of the 10 best religion books of the year. His latest book, Awakening the Soul of Power, was called A Balm for the Soul of Anyone Searching for Truth and Answers to Life's Difficult Questions by multiple Grammy Award-winning Gloria Estefan, and received a Nautilus Book Award, a Global Book Award, and a Book Excellence Award, and a Nonfiction Book Award. Christian, this is a moment where I'd love you to talk about your unique perspective on such a balanced man who has such a strong commitment to the divine feminine. In every one of my conversations with you, you live with a sense of absolutely irrefutable devotion to listening and honoring the mother. And I'm going to give the floor to you and make sure that we have enough time for our next guest. But I'm so grateful you have a few things we'd love to hear from you about this.
Thank you, Gary. I think I will bounce off of both of my books, piggyback off of them, and just speak a little bit about from each of their perspective. And Coming Out Spiritually, the theme of that book is that it's really tragic that so many people in the LGBTQ community, my community, have struggled with spirituality because they confuse it with religion. And no wonder, given the treatment that we have received at the hands of most religions. But that the irony of that, the tragedy of that, is that before the patriarchal cultures and religions, people that we today call LGBTQ were not only spiritually inclined, but were actually honored and respected and even revered in some places for the roles of spiritual service and leadership that we played all over the world. And so part of what I did in that book is come up with certain themes or certain archetypes that we have played throughout history, sort of like, it's, for example, keepers and creators of beauty, the mediators. In many indigenous cultures, we were thought to contain the essence of both masculine and feminine, which I know we all do. So I'm starting from that premise too, that those energies are balanced in all of creation, except in the mind of many humans on this little pebble that we call Earth. But that we have a particular role, like in the Native American traditions, we were called. There's an umbrella term that was coined in the late 70s, I think, two-spirit, because of that, because we were thought to bridge between the genders, so that when there was strife between a heterosexual couple, or the men and the women in a tribe, we were the mediators. We were the ones that helped facilitate the communication. One of the archetypes that we also played, I think, is really interesting to this conversation of the sacred marriage. And I called it the divine androgyne. And as it turns out, in many spiritual traditions, they speak about the balance or the marriage of the masculine and the feminine, this holy androgyny, as something to be aspired to, so that the more awakened that we become, the more that we mirror both the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, so that we hopefully find that balance in each of us. And so that eventually that we'll find that in the world too. So for example, in Taoism, we all know the yin yang, the perfect balance, and it's not a geometrical division. There's a little bit of one and the other, and as if to highlight the point even more, where there's a dot of one and the other. And Lao Tzu, who's considered the founder of Taoism, wrote that he who knows the masculine and at the same time keeps the feminine will be the whole world's channel. In Hinduism, there are a couple of interesting concepts. There's one of the manifestations of Shiva is Ardhanishvara, I think is how you pronounce it. It's Lord who is half woman. So it's the perfect balance between Shiva and Shakti. And they also have a concept that I also find really interesting that's called Tritiya Prataki, and I'm probably destroying the pronunciation of it. But it refers to a third nature. And so in Christianity, in the Gnostic gospel, the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is said to have said that it's not until we marry within ourselves the masculine and the feminine will we find the kingdom of God. And of course, the kingdom of God not being some mythical place that we go to when we die, but a state of being, a state of a mind that we all have access to and that he pointed the way to. And so then I want to talk a little bit about my more recent book, because it's also relevant, Awakening the Soul of Power, in which I talk about the different kinds of power that we relate to. Because as it turns out, most of us have an ambivalent relationship to power. We fear that if we really step into our power, that other people might reject us and we might end up alone and no fun. Who wants that? I also feel that we fear that we might abuse it. And no wonder, how many abuses of power have each of us witnessed in each of our lives? Combine that with the fact that we have been conditioned to believe that power is a bad thing. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what good-hearted person wants to be corrupted? But what they didn't tell us about that quote is that Lord Acton was speaking specifically about political power, not personal power, which is what we're talking about and what we're giving expression to. So when you add to that mix that we've all been conditioned to be afraid of the emotions, somewhere along the way, somebody mistakenly labeled the emotions weakness. And especially as men, little boys don't cry, since that's been ingrained into us since we were kids. And why is that? There's so many faulty assumptions about that, because the assumption is that only little girls cry, and because that's weakness. It's like, wait a minute. You want to talk about strength? You want to talk about power? You want to talk about resilience and courage? Let's talk about the power of creation that resides in a female body. And just a quick aside here, a joke. Betty White, who left us last year, apparently she was in one of these group celebrity interviews, and somebody said something about having balls, and she goes, "Wait just a minute. Where do we get this connection, this association between having balls and courage and strength? You thump those little things, and the guy bends over, collapses in pain. You want to talk courage? You want to talk strength? Let's talk vaginas. Those things take a pounding." And so really, it's just a way to say that about these stereotypical, limited, and limiting definitions that we have come up with about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. And so the theme, the tragic part of that is that when you combine all those factors, what happens is that we end up giving away our power. How many times have we said yes when inside it really wasn't okay with us? Yet we overrode our true feelings, our desires, our values, our beliefs, our dreams even sometimes, and we settle. We settle for an illusion of security, for a false sense of security, and for crumbs of pseudo love. And so the book talks about how do we heal this relationship to power so that we can find a way of expressing it that is an expression that is congruent with who we are, that doesn't require that we push anybody down, step on them, put our knee to their neck in order for us to feel powerful. And it's for everybody, and I'm going to end on this point, but it has a particular message for women about women's empowerment. And that stems from my conviction that the empowerment of women is the single most important thing that needs to happen in the world. And it's not to idealize women, it's not to put women up on a pedestal, it's certainly not to give women more crap that they have to clean up in this world, this mess that we have collectively made. It's because as a world, as a species, we've been running so off kilter in terms of the balance between the masculine and the feminine energies. And so I believe that when women are in 50% of power in this world, we don't want to go back to a matriarchal system. We want balance. That's what the times are calling for as we experience what to me is the end of the patriarchy. And so that once we balance, and Ali was talking about it, it has to start within. We can't expect it to find it to show up in the world until we all find it within. And so, Gary, thank you for hosting us, and thank you to all the presenters for continuing and for furthering along this important conversation.
You know, by the way, I want to correct you because I've been setting the bad example. It's Shalani, not Shenali. So thank you for doing that. You know, I want to make a bold statement that when I was reading your book, Christian, I felt like it was the perfect vehicle to address this very issue around cultivating the sacred marriage because of your firm conviction that you just boldly stated around the most important thing for the planet is the empowerment of women. The book reflects an understanding of power as something that is so fundamentally different than the way the mainstream has understood it. And every page is filled with a more enlightened and awakened understanding of power. So I have been using it as a way to heal my self-judgment as being accused of being too soft, too feminine, too emotional, too artist, whatever. And it's been a really powerful book to help me cultivate the stronger, a more modern and more accurate view of what power is in the way that Brene Brown did around vulnerability, right? So I just want to say thank you because I do think that your book is one of the important contributions to this cultivation of sacred marriage that we need to see on the planet. I really do, and I just want to thank you for it. I know how many years you've been working on it, and I'm so proud of you that it's out, and it's such a beautiful contribution. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to go on to the next person. I'm desperately wanting to play a 2-minute transformance to practice what I preach. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to because I just need to practice what I preach. So can we please play the unity piece, and then I'll introduce my beloved friend Yasmeen. Are you, Hubcast, are you prepared to play the unity invitation? Or if you're not set up for it, then we'll just go right to Yasmeen. And it's fine if you're not.
They're not in a place to play it, Gary.
All right, that's perfect. That's great. So I want to make an introduction. And what I'll do, at least, is just let's all drop in for a moment and use the music of our breath, use the music of our consciousness, use the music of the field that's toning at every moment to produce an experience of unified bonding with all that is, to remind us that our frontal lobe and our cognitive capacity is just a tiny part of who we are. And as we feel the ground under our feet and our hearts open and our minds stimulated and our souls awakened with these beautiful beings, Let's imagine we're all listening together to the crickets around a fire. The music of silence as the grandmother of sound. As all these thoughts are being dropped into our mitochondria, and the cymatic expression of our love of these people is moving our cells in a sacred geometric pattern that is in alignment with the field of love. And I love that we're going to Yasmeen because, in a way, Yasmeen represents really the application of what this means for women and for men on the planet, and specifically women's health. And so there is something perfect about you being our last speaker, Yasmeen, because you're such a on the front lines girl. You know, you're just so interested in, okay, what does this mean around our direct experience? You know, for women, what does it really mean when women get empowered, and how we can celebrate our unity with men and all this, and end the conversation of the splitting, the fragmenting. And I'm going to read Yasmeen's bio. Yasmeen Turayhi is a board member of Tekwati and the host of the podcast Gateways to Awakening, where she interviews leading experts in wellness, personal development, and higher consciousness. Gateways to Awakening is in the top 3% of all podcasts listened to globally, according to the listener score. Love that achievement. She has a master's certification in intuition medicine from the Academy of Intuition Medicine and offers intuitive mentorship and meditations. Her TEDx talk, which launched in March 2022, How to Use Your Intuition to Make a Better Decision, reached over 13,000 views in just 6 weeks. She is also the director, writer, and narrator, get this, of the 10-part audio miniseries Hyphenated Journey, which chronicles her experience of growing up as an Iraqi American. This miniseries was recently featured at the top of the podcast carousel on Apple as immersive storytelling just last week, a major honor in the podcast world. Her book, Product Marketing Debunked, this is her other part of her, which is just like, you know, the badass. The essential go-to market guide is now available on Amazon and has sold close to 10K copies, along with her second book, The Launch, A Product Marketer's Guide. She often writes about intuition on Medium, which she has over 3,000 subscribers. Yasmeen, let's see what you have to say after all these amazing things have been said. And I just love who you are, and I love your commitment, and I love how you're combining the intuition and the power of intuition. That's our birthright as men and women, every human, right? But you're standing on your capacity to really bring that into the mainstream in a major way. So let's hear what you have to say to this in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And also amazing what I heard from all the other panelists. It's such a privilege to be speaking amongst you. So it's interesting. I have had a lot of exposure to the feminine and the masculine, but in, I think, different ways. On my show, I've interviewed people who've spoken about relationships, about consciousness, co-author of The Marriage of Spirit, and I spoke at length about the polarities. And I think, from my perspective, I would not say I'm an expert on the feminine, but I have spent a lot of time thinking about my inner world and specifically how to unify and become neutral within myself, right? And so really moving post these polarities, which are really similar to the archetypal pieces of the masculine and the feminine. And I think we can actually take a look at nature, right? Nature doesn't like to waste energy, and it certainly doesn't like to waste energy on us. And so when we tend to over-index on one polarity, we see a lot of destruction and chaos come out. And, that's evidenced through hurricanes, tornadoes, fires. It's whenever there's a polarity within us, it's oftentimes reflected back in the external. And so when I was growing up, I didn't see women in positions of power, certainly not minority women in positions of power. And I frankly, and I think Shenali spoke to this point, that I frankly saw that in order to really immerse myself in power, I had to take on more masculine traits, right? And a lot of these are things that, have become social norms and definitions that have been propagated by society. So the idea of the masculine being worshiping the logical mind, worshiping structure and logic, and almost like worshiping form instead of the formless. That was something that I was really trained in a lot of the jobs that I was a part of. And I saw that within myself, and I've noticed this just across the board, at least in Western culture, that a lot of women are really paying a massive price for I would say, over-indexing on their masculine side over their feminine side. And, Gary brings up women's health. So this is a topic that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So a lot of women right now in childbearing ages are having a lot of difficulty getting pregnant. And, if you could look at that from a biological perspective, if your cortisol is increasing, it actually puts your progesterone and estrogen levels out of balance. And your progesterone and estrogen levels have to be balanced in order for you to be fertile, right? And so I think that we've sort of, as a society, have done women and the feminine a disservice by over-indexing the sort of the power structure around the masculine, right? So that's sort of playing out. That's like a meme that's been playing out for a very long time. I do think, to a lot of the folks on the call, the panelists' point, we are now moving towards, I think it was called the ascension of the feminine. I would say it's more of a restoration of the feminine. It's like the feminine has always been there, but it just really hasn't had its rightful presence in our culture today, right? And I agree. I don't think that we need to over-index again on the feminine. I will say, though, when we've gone so deeply into one polarity, which is building this massively patriarchal, masculine dominant culture that is rewarding the masculine over the feminine, if we want to balance that polarity, there is an accounting ledger of energy that is being tracked on this earth, karmically, physically, and you know what happens when you take out a lot of credit and debit. If you take out a lot of debt, for example, that the collector comes and collects with interest. And so I think we're seeing a lot of that play out today in culture. And so, I've just been sort of witnessing that. And I do think that there might be an over-index towards the feminine. I think that that's sort of happened with the women's movement, is that there's been a desire to move the power structure towards the feminine. But I agreed with a lot of the other panelists, is that we really want balance. And, to Shenali's point too, like I think a lot of the conversation, for me at least, started within the self. It's like, well, where is it within myself that I feel a sense of imbalance? And the external world is really just a mirror, right? And so the mirror tells me, we're trying to change the mirror, right? And what we really want to do is change ourselves. So I don't think the world is going to change until people really take a very close look at their own inner nature, because the world is just reflecting back to us what our nature is, right? And so that's where it starts. And I think that we can balance our polarities by processing our shadow, our light, our masculine and feminine within us. And that takes a sense of courage, but I'm hopeful. I mean, I really do believe that, Gen Z, if you have conversations with them, I'm just so blown away by the way that they're navigating society and culture. And I think they see the bigger macro picture, and they're not getting caught in the micro. So, so these are some of the ideas that I've been tracking for a while. And I think we need to shift these polarities more into complements. Like, how are we able to complement each other and complement our sides, and dropping importance, right? The more importance we give one polarity, the more we actually distort its energy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful, Yasmeen. what is clear to me is that I want to have a more of a summit, because to be able to use the opportunity to have conversations around the ramifications of hyper genderfying this conversation, rather than understanding what energetically this is all about, around arriving at the new earth, the state of unity, vibrational coherence, whatever term you use. This is an important conversation that we need to dislodge ourselves from thinking that we're talking about gender when we're talking about balance in our inner ecosystem. And the tools that we all are talking about, edutainment, my music, my videos, etc., they're all tools that actually help us remember ourselves and the wholeness. Why don't we bring everybody on the screen? We have to be absolutely hard stop in 9 minutes. I wish to God we had more time for the intergenerational dialogue. I promised you, Matthew. But I do think that as a way to come to full circle and in honoring of the role that you played in these many years, I'd just love to hear a few just reflections as you have heard everybody share something. Matthew, be really nice to just have you start. We're each going to have like literally a minute or two to say something before we have to sign off. But I just want to say this has been such a rich conversation as we straddle the literal misunderstanding of the gender conversation and how that applies to our lives, and how we cultivate this spiritual balance that we're all seeking, that the religions have been talking about as you started from the beginning, Matthew. So just if you can kick off these short bursts of final shares. You're muted, I think, Matthew. Or is my...
There we go.
There we go.
Hear me? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I want to thank the other panel members. I enjoyed very much hearing all of you. And of course, the word patriarchy came up several times necessarily because, this has been the dominant history for several thousand years. But as people pointed out, it doesn't have to be. And that's the point. We're at a point of breaking out of that. And I was reminded how when I first published this book on the hidden spirituality of men, and it ends with a chapter on the sacred marriage of the masculine and feminine, the first response I got was from a woman, an email. She said, I have over 200 books in my personal library on the divine feminine, and not a single book on the sacred masculine. And she said, I have 2 teenage sons. Now, she said, I don't regret for a minute that I've been working on the divine feminine for the last 22 years of my life. But she said, until I read your book, I didn't realize how much men had suffered under patriarchy as well.
Yes.
And for me, that was very much of an insight that if men would wake up, and as was told by Christian and others, to get in touch with their own suffering and their own feelings, therefore, more and more men would be allies with women, because they would recognize, hey, this is an invitation to a new way of being male and masculine in a healthy way. And this is how we would, this would really contribute to, as I say, more allies for women, but also healthier men, and who would also demand that there be this balance we're talking about, this harmony, this dance within ourselves, and therefore within our institutions, because we have to change if our institutions are going to change. And again, I come back to education, and I'm glad that one of you is working on edutainment, because obviously that's bringing art and education together. And the term that came up several times about intuition, that one of you is an expert in intuition. I'm reminded what Einstein said, that we've been given 2 gifts in life, 2 brains that are gifts, our rational brain and our intuitive brain. And he says values come from the intuitive brain, not from the rational brain. He said the rational brain gives us method, but not values. And he said, but we're living in a society that honors the rational and ignores the intuitive. And therefore, he said, I abhor, this is a quote from Einstein, I abhor American education, unquote. even though he was living on Princeton campus his whole life in America, practically. But what I'm saying, I too want to honor that intuition and to bring that balance back. And that's what artists do. And the artist in all of us does. The artist is not just someone as gifted as Gary is. We all have the artist inside of us. And like Adirondacke finds the artist who wants to leave. The artist is one who wants to leave behind a gift. Well, isn't that all of us? Don't we all want to leave behind a gift? And so anyway, I'm real happy to hear this language about, naming patriarchy for what it is, but also realizing liberation, there are ways out, and there always have been. That's what the Exodus story is about in the Jewish tradition. And it's, of course, what civil rights movements are about, and Gandhi's nonviolence is about. But that we can move to this other place where, as everyone is saying, it begins inside with asking questions of, have we internalized the values of patriarchy, or are we able to rid ourselves of them, kind of an exorcism, so that we can look at the world differently and see things in terms of harmony and balance?
Thank you, Matthew. That's beautiful. I literally have room for like 30 seconds for each of you, but I want to just hear just anything that comes to you from what you feel like you've gotten from this, or anything you want to offer just very briefly, because we have to be done at 5:25 the latest. Anyone? Christian? Yasmeen? Can't hear you. Muted. Christian, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I want to quickly complete a thought that I didn't complete when I was saying about why it's important to focus on women, is that when women are at 50% of power, we're going to have a very different relationship to war and poverty and hunger and social justice and how we treat the environment, and including homophobia, because I feel homophobia and misogyny are two sides of the same coin. The deeper one is misogyny. And I wanted to also say that men also pay a price for this patriarchal system of power over this hierarchical, fear-based, force-based. And just to quickly look at a couple of numbers, longevity, women outlive men by 5 years in the US, by 7 years globally. Suicide, men commit suicide 4 times as frequently in the US as women do. And 70% of the suicides in this country are committed by middle-aged white men, which are still the repository of power, the ones who hold the majority of the power. And why doesn't that work? Shouldn't they live longer and have a better quality of life? And yet it's not the case. And I think it's because of that limited and limiting perception of what it means to be a man, and that we walk around like we have to be these uncaring, unfeeling robots.
Yes.
And finally, just wanted to say really quickly that to me, the two most profound spiritual values are surrender and the capacity to love, the depth of loving, which are both traditionally considered feminine, yet to me are the most powerful forces in creation.
Oh, God. Now I can't even give you women a chance to give a final word. So you're going to have to forgive me for that. Oh. No, it's okay. No. It's fine. Thank you. That was beautiful, Christian. It's just a plethora of great things. I'm going to complete.
Gary, let's hear a final sentence from Shenali.
Okay. Thank you. Just to say anything at all, please.
Thank you so much. I cannot agree more with either of you, actually all three of you, Yasmeen, Christian, and Matt. From this conversation, I feel like what we all can take away is there's so much untapped human potential within each and every single one of us. And that is also saying we have both masculine and feminine energy within us. The time is now. Let's come together. We all have showed up here. So let's continue this journey. There's hope. I mean, this conversation alone gives us so much hope. There are people who are awakened enough to the truth to really show up and take this journey together.
Amen. Yasmeen, last sentence. Thank you.
I really enjoyed hearing from everyone. I think, going back to your first opening phrase, like, what is the new mythology of the new earth with Joseph Campbell? I think that it's messy, right? And I feel like what we need to do is to leave room for the messiness of human behavior and being human in all this. Because I think that we are expecting perfection in this process, or expecting us to just be able to move towards, balance right away. And I hear that a lot in the spiritual communities and spiritual conversations. And I feel like that message is also very anti-human. And I think, to echo just Christian's point real quick, is that I think the answer is not necessarily to have, at least in my opinion, 50% of women in power. It's to have conscious people in power, the most conscious people, on the planet, who are doing their inner work, show up. Because I don't think that it's about gender, right? At the end of the day, it's really about consciousness.
Fabulous. I'm going to end this with the last sentence from Matthew Fox. The world may not be ready for this new man or this new human to emerge, but emerge he must if we are to continue living on a planet which is demanding that a healthier, more sustainable human man appear. Thank you, panelists, for accepting my invitation. There's a beautiful thing coming up with Georgia and the wonderful conversation that's going on. World Unity Week is going to be the most important event on the earth by the year 2030, if not next year. And I love you all, community, World Unity Unity Earth community. I love you all. Thank you. We're going to pass this on. Love to all of you. Bye-bye.